Alright guys, let's talk about what everybody wants to know. How much did this silly LS 8HP station wagon cost me to put together? I'll take you through the whole car and the parts I purchased. I threw in a few pulls midway through, mostly to remind myself why this whole thing was worth it. And then at the end, we'll tally it all up and I'll talk about some options to save money compared to what I did. Let's get into it. We'll start off with the electronics that are behind everything. This is a Max EC Race. Kind of a no-brainer if you're going to build an 8HP E9X car. You get an ECU and TCU all in one and native E9X CAN bus support, which is a game changer for a swap. I picked up their ECU and their terminated LS harness for about $2,800. I then got their 8HP harness for another $300. And then to handle the chassis side wiring, I got the Speed C E9X plug-and-play harness for $420. I also used Drayson at Mead Motorsports for tuning. He charges, at the time of recording this, about $550 for an ECU and TCU tune. Motor in the car is just an old Iron Block 5.3. It's a Gen 3 LM7. I got it from a nice guy on Facebook Marketplace. After selling some of the extras that it came with, I'm in the motor about $1,400 or so. It's got a BTR Truck Norris cam kit, some minor headwork, and that's about it. But most importantly, it has great oil pressure. I did replace plugs and wires. It came with some ignition coils, but about $200 for those. New sensors everywhere I could, another $200 for those. And any gasket I touched, I went ahead and replaced. So intake manifold, valve cover, rear main seal, etc. About $150 for all those. I'm using the stock LS fuel rail that came with my motor. The previous owner powder coated it purple, which is actually growing on me quite a bit. I did replace the injectors with some FIC 42-pound injectors while I was in there. Those were about $425. I'm using the stock BMW fuel pump still, as well as the stock fuel line. I just needed about $50 in fittings to mate the stock fuel line to the LS fuel rail. This is an LS6 intake manifold. These things are dumb expensive for some reason, but I really wanted one just for that classic LS look. This one was $300 on Marketplace, which is a pretty good deal. I'm also using the LS3 gold blade throttle body. That was $160. And then I needed a $40 throttle body adapter just to mate the throttle body to the intake manifold. This one's from ICT Billet. The intake has about $100 worth of parts between Amazon and Summit Racing in it. Nothing special. I did have to seek out the sharpest 4-inch elbow I could for the throttle body to the intake just to avoid butchering my fan shroud. It's tight, but everything fits. I'm running the LS E9X accessory drive with Sandin AC. It was about $280 on sale. I went with Corvette spacing just to have the most room up front, but that did require me to pick up a new harmonic balancer. Motor came with the truck one. I got a Corvette one for about $130. The motor came with a brand new water pump, which was a nice little bonus. I did get a new high output 220 amp Speedway alternator for $200, and then a new Sandin 508 AC compressor for another $200. Can't forget the belt, a whopping $20. I did swap from a stock tensioner to this manual tensioner from ICT. The stock one I got, I don't know if it was bad or what, just had a little bit more wobble than I was comfortable with. So picked this one up for $100 and haven't had any issues with it. LS-E90 makes all the stuff you need for plug and play AC in these swaps. So these are the LS-E9X Sandin AC lines for $160. And then they make adapter fittings for the firewall and condenser for another $50. I spent about $150 on all the hoses and fittings I needed for the cooling system. Go check out SFD Garage on YouTube. He's got a walkthrough of his setup, and I copied that almost exactly. I did get a new LS-E9X expansion tank just to move the expansion tank from the passenger side to the driver's side. Make a little room for a turbo one day, maybe. That was $300. I deleted the rear coolant crossovers for $25, and then this is just a standard GM Performance coolant crossover for the front for $50. Under the car now, purchased a new AC Delco starter for $125. Two new OEM motor mounts were $150, and then the LS E9X swap engine mounts were $250. There are a few oil pan options out there for this swap. I'm using the TSP 81074 from Poor Man Motorsports. It's basically a Holley 302-1 knockoff for half the price. Now for the good stuff. This is a Dodge Ram 8HP70. Make sure you get the right trim if you're shopping for these with a max ECU. This is out of a 4x2 classic 5.7 truck. I got this one from a local junkyard for $600 with the stock torque converter, and it's been working great. I did go ahead and do a full service on this thing when I got it home. Opened the pan to make sure everything looked okay. About $450 for a new service kit. The fluid for these is not cheap. There's almost no way I could have made this swap work without working with Guru Autowerks. I got their full 8 HP kit. It was expensive at $2,000, but comes with everything you need to swap one of these. Plus you get 5-star support from Josh, the 8 HP goat himself. I mean, phew, just look at that billet adapter plate. That thing is a work of art. The kit's built around using a stock LS flex plate, so if your motor came with one, you're probably good to go. That also lets you drag racers pick up an SFI rated one without any issues. I had to buy a new flex plate, but it was only about $150 from Speedway. The kit is built around these Dodge 8 HP 70s. Comes with everything you need to run a transmission cooler. You can see I've got mine mounted up front here, as well as the thermostat down below it. It also comes with a billet upper transmission mount. If your car was an automatic to begin with, you can actually use the stock lower mount like I did here, or you can pick up an adjustable one that E90 sells. I did throw in some new OEM trans mounts while I was there for $100. The kit also comes with a shifter adapter to run an F-Series shifter in your stock E90 mounting points. The shifter itself, mine was about $100 from eBay. One of the coolest parts of this swap is that if your car came with a 6 HP initially, you can actually just take your output flange off, swap it to the Dodge 8 HP 70, and your stock drive shaft will bolt right up, as you see here. Unfortunately, my car came with the crappy GM 6L45, so I had to pick up a 6 HP output flange on eBay for $100, but once I did that, it really did just bolt up, no weird vibrations, drives like a stock car. These are the LS E9X long tube headers. They were $700, but worth every penny. I did wrap them in some DEI titanium heat wrap, about $100 for that. I'll never do that again, but it is keeping heat down in the engine bay pretty nicely. As for my exhaust, this is a full 3-inch stainless setup. I've got 2 high flow cats after the headers just to keep some of the stank down. They go into a vibrant ultra quiet resonator. And I still haven't found a muffler I'm in love with. This is a chambered muffler from Stainless Works that sounds pretty good and keeps noise down, but I'm still experimenting. Cost for everything I just mentioned was about $950. Some general things I use for the swap: all sorts of power ground cables, some 0 gauge for the bigger stuff, some smaller for some simple wiring. Figure about $200 for that. All new fluids to get the car up and running again, about $300 for that. And then I use DEI fire wrap or matting anywhere I could just to try to keep temps down. So far nothing's melted, so we'll consider that a win. About $150 for that. Whew. Okay, let's go take this thing for a rip.
I love this car.
Okay, yep, it was worth it. Add everything up, and the grand total of parts for this build was $15,385. There are definitely ways you could save some money compared to my build, though. For example, if you're not a plug-and-play princess like me and can do some wiring yourself, you could easily knock some money off the cost of wiring harnesses. And then if you just stuck with stock manifolds and a pretty simple exhaust, maybe reuse the stock muffler, a good chunk of money could be saved there. You could also probably find a better deal on a more complete engine and not have to get nickel and dime to death like I did. But honestly, even if this wasn't the cheapest way to do an LS swap, I have zero regrets. The car turned out amazing. Every time I start it up, I laugh because it's so dumb, yet somehow so good at the same time, if that makes any sense. Regardless, I learned a ton during the process of this build, both about cars and YouTube, and I'm kind of starting to get the itch to do another one. Maybe an LT1 with a manual this time? Thanks for watching, guys.